Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing The Writing Life by Annie Dillard. Annie's a fantastic writer. I first found out about her through Maria Popova from Brain Pickings and, of course, Tim Ferriss. And for those of us who are writers, we're always looking for ways to improve, ways that we can do better in our writing. And it's not a very long book, but there's so many interesting and thoughtful points that she makes. And I thought I would just read some of them and ruminate through them with you. The part you must jettison is not only the best written part, it is also oddly that part which was to have been the very point. It is the original key passage, the passage on which the rest was to hang, and from which you yourself drew the courage to begin. So there is this idea of killing your darlings. I think this is Hemingway who says this, that don't be too attached to something in your writing that doesn't work. If you are trying to push something into there because you're so enamored with how it sounds or the idea, you are doing your writing and your readers a disservice. You have to be willing to be ruthless, to cut out the thing that doesn't work, that makes your writing looser and less coherent. And all good writing coaches share this advice, and it's something that just needs to be repeated over and over and over. I'll read this again. The part you must jettison is not only the best written part, it is also, oddly, that part which was to have been the very point. It is the original key passage, the passage on which the rest was to hang, and from which you yourself drew the courage to begin. Several delusions weaken the writer's resolve to throw away work. If he has read his pages too often, those pages will have a necessary quality, the ring of the inevitable, like poetry known by heart. They will perfectly answer their own familiar rhythms. He will retain them. So you have to be careful. It is absolutely crucial to read your writing out loud as you're revising. That is a basic writing 101 technique and tool. If you're not doing it, you're missing out. You need to hear how the writing sounds out in the world. And she's pointing out you can sometimes get too in love with the phrasing. It has to be what's right, not necessarily what you've fallen in love with. Again, be ruthless, be detached, be willing to look at the work from how it will be approached, not how you feel about it. Do you love how it sounds? Rather, does it effectively communicate what needs to be communicated? Every year, the aspiring photographer brought a stack of his best prints to an old, honored photographer, seeking his judgment. Every year, the old man studied the prints and painstakingly ordered them into two piles, bad and good. Every year, the old man moved a certain landscape print into the bad stack. At length, he turned to the young man. You submit the same landscape every year, and every year I put it on the bad stack. Why do you like it so much? The young photographer said, Because I had to climb a mountain to get it. We can be prisoners sometimes of the experience that it takes to deliver something written, something photographed, something filmed. That's the wrong attitude. And this story underlines that. I said that this landscape was bad. Why do you put it in the good pile? Well, it has to be good because I climbed a mountain to get that picture. Sometimes you get to the mountain, you take the picture, you look at it later, you thought, this isn't nearly as good as I thought or I hoped it would be. But it has to be good because I climbed that mountain. And this story exposes the silliness of that frame of thinking. Sometimes the best photos are the ones that you didn't put the most effort into. You just happened to catch the right time of day or the right moment or this bird perched at an angle that made everything come together. You didn't do anything for it. And sometimes it's the other way around. You spent hours and hours, you set up your shot, and you got it. But the point is, don't make something good because you did a lot of work to get it when it's objectively bad. A cab driver sang his songs to me in New York. Some we sang together. He had turned the meter off. We drove around Midtown singing. One long song he sang twice. It was the only dull one. I said, You already sang that one. Let's sing something else. And he said, You don't know how long it took me to get that one together. How many books do we read from which the writer lacked courage to tie off the umbilical cord? How many gifts do we open from which the writer neglected to remove the price tag? Is it pertinent? Is it courteous for us to learn what it costs the writer personally? I think that is a fantastic turn of phrase. Hear it again. How many gifts do we open from which the writer neglected to remove the price tag? Is that courteous? Is it pertinent? The writer should deliver what he or she is trying to communicate to you clean and entire. There shouldn't be a sign of a price tag. There shouldn't be any sense of what it took to deliver it. It takes away from the enjoyment of it. And in fact, it distracts us to then look at you. We shouldn't be looking at you. We should be looking at your writing. And beware that you don't distract your reader with yourself rather than what it is that you're trying to communicate. The notion that one can write better during one season of the year than another, Samuel Johnson labeled imagination operating upon luxury. Another luxury for an idle imagination is the writer's own feeling about the work. There is neither a proportional relationship nor an inverse one between a writer's estimation of a work in progress and its actual quality. The feeling that the work is magnificent and the feeling that it is abominable are both mosquitoes to be repelled, ignored, or killed, but not indulged. So Annie is saying, you can think it's awesome, you can think it's terrible, but in any case, don't sit on that feeling. It's not relevant. It's not really what matters. And that's so crucial. By that same token, don't over rely on what peers say. It is important to get peer review if you have a writing coach, to get coach's review or an editor. Editors are one of the most important people on the planet for writers. Everyone needs an editor in one way or another. So you need to take that feedback, but you shouldn't be discouraged if people don't necessarily like something, right? So that's what she's saying. Whether you think it's magnificent or you think it's abominable, the question is ultimately, are you communicating what it is that you want to communicate? And your feelings can pollute the vision of that. So when your editor can give you some feedback, that can help you sift through the noise. And that's important to lean on that. But it shouldn't be a deal breaker necessarily. Do not necessarily give in to the sense of an editor is always right. Sometimes they can be wrong, but I would say most of the time they are. I think I'm trying to be encouraging without being dogmatic about it, if you're hearing my hedging. The written word is weak. Many people prefer life to it. Life gets your blood going, and it smells good. Writing is mere writing. Literature is mere. It appeals only to the subtlest senses, the imagination's vision, and the imagination's hearing, and the moral sense, and the intellect. This writing that you do, that so thrills you, that so rocks and exhilarates you, as if you were dancing next to the band, is barely audible to anyone else. The reader's ear must just down from loud life to the subtle, imaginary sounds of the written word. An ordinary reader picking up a book can't yet hear a thing. It will take half an hour to pick up the writing's modulations, its ups and downs and louds and softs. It's so important. And I think, again, Annie manages to tell us something in a very clear way that we may instinctively know and not have articulated well. And that is, you can't just open David Copperfield and suddenly be in Dickens. It's going to take you a few pages. And she puts a time. She says half an hour. It may take you half an hour to get into that world, get into that time period, get into London, hear it, smell it, feel it. Be patient with it, enjoy it. You don't necessarily get into it right away. This is the lure of audiobooks or film or television, is it allows you to be immersed right away. It's a bit of a cheat. And it has its own purpose. I'm not trying to say that those mediums aren't important and necessary, but you have to be patient with the written word, and it will deliver for your patience. Why would anyone read a book instead of watching big people move on a screen? Because a book can be literature. It is a subtle thing, a poor thing, but our own. In my view, the more literary the book, the more purely verbal, crafted sentence by sentence, the more imaginative, reasoned, and deep, the more likely people are to read it. The people who read are the people who like literature, after all, whatever that might be. They like or require what books alone have. If they want to see films that evening, they will find films. If they do not like to read, they will not. People who read are not too lazy to flip on the television. They prefer books. Too lazy to flip on the television. I cannot imagine a sorrier pursuit than struggling for years to write a book that attempts to appeal to people who do not read in the first place. Dillard here is talking about knowing your audience and making sure that the audience exists. Are these people who actually read the people that you're writing for? Not as much as we're seeing a growth in readership, I think among young adults, we're seeing, BookTube and Goodreads grow in their own way. I think also we're losing a lot of people to other forms of media, whether that's short form audio or video. So I think that the jury's still out on where books are. I try to be optimistic despite, I think, my observations which lead to pessimism. What then shall I do this morning? How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. What we do with this hour and that one is what we are doing. A schedule defends from chaos and whim. It is a net for catching days. It is a scaffolding on which a worker can stand and labor with both hands at sections of time. A schedule is a mock-up of reason and order, willed, faked, and so brought into being. It is a peace and a haven set into the wreck of time. It is a lifeboat on which you find yourself decades later still living. Each day is the same, so you remember the series afterward as a blurred and powerful pattern. There is no shortage of good days. It is good lives that are hard to come by. And that is the most fantastic part of this book. There's cross correlations here between Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Workweek, James Clear and Atomic Habits. I'll put links to both of those in the description as well as cards. I'll repeat some of these again. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. Are we talking about the life that we want to live in the future, as opposed to observing the life we're living right now based on our actions? The life you're living right now is your life. How we spend our days is how we spend our lives. And if I'm doing that, am I doing that with intentionality? A schedule defends from chaos and whim. It is a net for catching days. Think about that. It is a net for catching days. Days are just coming by. But if you have a schedule, you can catch whole days and use them. There is no shortage of good days. It is good lives that are hard to come by. Oh, fantastic. I love how she writes. And I always say, when you run into a writer like Annie, you feel inadequate as a writer. You think, I'm never going to write anything good. Write as if you were dying. At the same time, assume you write for an audience consisting solely of terminal patients. That is, after all, the case. What would you begin writing if you knew you would die soon? What could you say to a dying person that would not enrage by its triviality? Write about winter in the summer. Describe Norway as Ibsen did, from a desk in Italy. Describe Dublin as James Joyce did, from a desk in Paris. Willa Cather wrote her prairie novels in New York City. Mark Twain wrote Huckleberry Finn in Hartford, Connecticut. Recently, scholars learned that Walt Whitman rarely left his room. It's barely over 100 pages. If you are a writer, an aspiring writer, or someone who just loves to read and wants to get some insight into how writers craft, the writing life is for you, and Annie Dillard's a treat to read. If you'd like to support this work, support our channel, hit like, subscribe, share it with people who you know who are interested in writing or who are writers themselves. If they haven't read Annie Dillard, they should. And if you want to buy them a copy as a gift, you can use my link in the description below. It's one way you can support this channel. You could also thank me for this presentation by sending me a Buy Me a Coffee or a PayPal. There are links to that. If you want to support my work on an ongoing basis, there's Patreon and YouTube membership. You'll get early access to videos like this one, as well as the chance to chat with me behind the scenes and get videos that I don't release to the general public. If you want to nominate a book in the future, this is one of the books on my all-time list that's back here. I'm sort of working through a lot of those this summer. But there are books that I'd like to read, and those are on my Amazon wish list. You can buy one, send it my way, effectively sponsor the video, and I'll try to get to it in a timely manner. You'll see there's all sorts of books on there. General books, books about Palestine. That's for my Palestine bookshelf project. If you'd like to get involved in that, that's not for this channel. Or books on France. I work on another channel with a friend of mine called The Americans in Paris, so you might check that out as well. But either way, the Amazon wishlist is where you want to go if you'd like to nominate a future video. Until next time, enjoy your reading.